Hello, my name is Andrew Evans. We're going to walk through how to access our Kioptrix machine while also uh, making a username with our last name and a password. So to get started, we'll kind of go back to last week's lesson where we need to find out the IP address of our virtual machine. And right here we have it using the ifconfig tool. We know that our IP address for the Kali Linux machine is 102. So to find what other systems are on our machine or on our network, we need to run an nmap, and this will scan our network and let us know what systems are on that network as well. Um, and we see here 101. Well, we know 100 is the virtual box itself. And our 102 is our Kali Linux machine. So we know 101 is our target, our Kioptrix machine. And then here's just another way to do it. You just do nmap, and then you make sure using 101, see if it gives you the same results. After this, we'll do a more intrusive scan, which will give us all this information we see down here. Um, and what this shows us, so it shows us the open ports like the other one did. It shows us the state and what service it is. But it also shows us what version they're using or what protocol they're using. It also gives us a little bit more information, like port 139, we know it's Samba or SMDB, which is key for this lab. So uh, SMBD uh, allows for root access or remote root access. So in today's lesson, we're going to learn how to access our Kali Linux machine through using the open port Samba. So scrolling down here, it gives us the rest of the information. So there's different ports that we can use. Some other hacks I had saw was OpenSSH. There were some hacks with it. HTTP, Apache, I saw some with it. So you can play around with some different means, but today we're going to go over this. So after we find this out, we need to launch our Metasploit uh, console. So we type in the code in MSF console, which will launch Metasploit. Down here, we want to figure out what Samba we're using, what version of Samba we're using. That way we can plug it in and use a exploit code to access the directory and be a root. And doing this, we want to use auxiliary scanner SMDB or SMB version. Then we want to set our host. So the host is the computer that we're targeting, which would be our Kioptrix machine. And then we want to run this. And what this does is it runs it, and we've got the port right here. And then we also know now that it's 20 or 2.2.1a. So what we want to do, we want to go to our browser. I'll pull it down here. So we want to take this. We want to do or we can do Samba 2.2.1a exploit. And what we will do is go right down here to exploit DB, click on it, and then we'll click right here on view raw. And then it'll pull up this exploit code, big long exploit code. What you'll do is you'll hit Control A and Control C, and you'll copy that. I'm not going to do that because I've already done it. And then you patch it in to, actually I'll exit this and I'll show you exactly how I did it. Oh, wrong side. So you'll type in vi 10.c, and this will let you insert code into the 10 right here. 10.c is the file that we make because up here we see 10. So this is the exploit that tells us that it's the exploit. And then after we run that, it'll pop up that window I just had. You'll paste it in, and then you'll hit WQ, which will be a quick save. After you do this, we'll run a GCC command to establish it. See if I can find where it's at here. There it is. We'll run this GCC command, which will make it official and save it. And then after we do that, we'll run this. And what this gives us is it gives us the Samba, and this is the exploit that was run. And it gives us different ways of exploiting our Kioptrix machine. The one we're going to choose today is our brute force attack. So what we'll want is a 10, which will launch our exploit. We want a B because we want a brute force attack. We want 0 because that's our Linux machine, and then we want our Kioptrix machine. Once we get this, we'll hit enter, it'll show us that it worked. Now, if we normally do ls, nothing pops up. But if we do pwd, it shows us we're in the temporary file. To get it back to the root, just hit cd ... and then ls again, and it'll give us the root. You can find out if you're in root access by typing who am I, which will show you your root, and you can ask for an ID. It'll give you that there. Now, an additional step that I had saw is that you can type cat etc shadow. And what this does is it brings up all the different users. Now, I show this to you because I already made Evans my account. And this was a way that I could confirm that I was in fact in the system. Now, I'll bring down our Kioptrix machine. So on Kioptrix machine, if it'll load here. Oh my goodness. So, also found our root password. I found our root password. Actually, I changed the root password through this menu we were on before by just hitting pass WD, and it asked me to enter a new password in. We're not going to do that right now. We'll just hit enter, and it'll say no password supply. There was an error. So while we're here in our Kioptrix machine, to add a new user, you want to do add user. You can hit that, it'll show you what to do. To do a new user, do add user, and because I've already added mine, we'll do it with my first name. Options, and then we'll do Andrew. Oh, wrong one. Do user, add, options, Andrew. Sudo user add options Andrew. There we go. So sudo user add Andrew, which now adds my name. And then to change my password, we can actually go back, check and see if in fact that worked. So we'll do the cat etc shadow, and there it is. Andrew has been added. Now, to change the password, you need to do password Andrew, and then enter in whatever password 1234. 1234. It was saved successfully. We'll go back here. Now we'll log out and we'll do Andrew 1234, and there it is. Now we have access to the root password. We're able to sign in. We've made a sign-in sheet. What does this mean? So I'm going to go ahead and power down my machines here. And let's talk about what can happen if we don't worry about malicious attacks. So there we go. So first thing we need to look at is privilege escalation. So what is privilege escalation? Is just when you have unauthorized access into a system. Some of these can be just like human behaviors, design flaws, oversights in OS, which can lead to these unauthorized accesses. Um, and then on top of that, you've got ransomware, phishing attacks, and APTs, which can be um, used to deploy some of these privilege escalation attacks. Buffer overflow, so you can have two different types. You can have stacked, uh, excuse me, you can have stacked uh, based, or you can have heap based. So a stack base are the most common. They're used to take advantage of like stacked memory, which exists during execution of a function. Uh, and then a heap base is more difficult, which entails flooding of memory space. Uh, and it's flooding memory with more space than what is set aside for normal everyday programs. Uh, it's so, in short, memory storage regions temporarily hold data while it's being transferred from one location to another. Um, threat actors use this by overriding the memory, or they do this by overriding the memory, which leads to the overflow. And then changes in execution paths lead to sensitive information or damage to files. So if they get access to this, they have uh, methods and ways to attack the files, to leak the files, to uh, basically have their way with any sensitive documents. So rootkits uh, are designed to give hackers control to a target device. Excuse me. It can be performed through various social engineering attacks. One of the most common ones is phishing. Um, and other types of malware. Common types of this is hardware, firmware, rootkits, bootloader, rootkits, application, memory, kernel, and virtual. So for the hardware, it's just rootkits that affect your like BIOS, hardware, software. So BIOS, hard drives, uh, routers, anything like that. Then you've got bootloaders, which a bootloader is just your the way you boot up into your software. So um, this is where a rootkit replaces the bootloader uh, and then compromises that bootloader to gain access to the system. Applications is when a computer is affected uh, or it affects the normal process of an application. And then you've got memory. So it's a malicious code that hides in your memory and then conducts its malicious operations when the computer is not active or when it's in downtime. Then you've got kernel mode, which is the most severe type of rootkit. This targets the core operation, so your OS or operating system, and then it can allow uh, allow attackers to have access throughout your system and be able to have all permissions necessary. A virtual one, this is when a rootkit is hosted on an operating system or host an operating system as a virtual machine. And then that way it can intercept calls or any application uh, made through the operating system. Trojan horses. So I believe we've heard about this before. However, Trojan horses are types of malware that conceal a malicious software or malicious content to try to fool or um, trick an individual from clicking on it and thinking it's harmless. Some types of this is a backdoor attack, exploit, rootkit, banker, DDoS, or downloader. So we'll talk about backdoor here in a second, but this is just where it remotely accesses and gives attackers a way to gain entry into the system after the initial attack. An exploit is just when it's when it targets pre-existing vulnerabilities within the software or within the computer system. Rootkit, we just talked about it. So it's a way for um, malware currently being pushed onto the system to be undetected. Bankers, it goes after any financial institutions or financial transactions. And then distributed denial of service is when it sends a bunch of traffic to a certain website where nobody else can access that website. It can crash the server. And then downloader is usually when individuals download documents and they're encrypted with some sort of virus or malicious content. Now, Trojan horses can be identified through various signs. If you notice poor device performance or just strange behavior in general, things aren't acting right, or you start having like pop ups or spam interruptions when you're just using normal applications or browsing the web, that's when you need to kind of come and talk to one of the IT department. We can get that fixed. So, backdoors is a way for a criminal to access a quote unquote backdoor so it can have access to a system after uh, the initial um, the initial exploit. So actions taken after. So once these backdoors are in place, an attacker goes to steal information. It takes part in fraudulent transactions. It can install different malware on the computer. It can take advantage of any rootkits that are on the system that haven't been patched. It can also have DOS attacks, which is similar to DDoS, but it floods traffic to a specific server so nobody else can access that server. And then also they can just deface websites through the code, the web code. Now, cryptojacking, so different types of it. Cryptojacking is just where an attacker uses the targeted system to crypto mine, so to gain cryptocurrency or anything like that. I just talked about DOS attacks. Ransomware is when they hold certain information for ransom, so it could be financial, it could be a list of demands, it depends. And if they aren't met, then the attacker can either leak or destroy this data. Spyware is when a attacker sits and monitors your keystrokes or has a software that monitors your keystrokes so that way they can access your system through your credentials. And the Trojan horses we had already talked about, but it's just malicious content disguised as uh, a coup to try to trick you into clicking on it so it can gain access to your system. Viruses, this is one that most people have heard before. So it's just a program that's on a computer that can duplicate itself and infect different users within the organization or whoever's on the network. Some signs of this could be the speed of the system, pop-up windows, stuff we talked about before. If your program starts self executing. So if they start popping up and running on their own, then that's kind of a big concern. If your accounts keep getting logged off of, your device keeps crashing, you send out emails that you never really sent out, or you just have a random homepage that changes. Those are some things you can see and immediately contact the IT department. We can try to take care of that. So types of viruses, you've got browser hijackers, so where they go on and change the coding of the website so that they can they can inject some sort of malicious content, web scripting, uh, which targets web browser security, and like I just said, injects malicious code. You've got file infector, so they just inject malicious things into files. So when somebody clicks on it, it can spread to other devices within the network. And then, of course, network, any file that's already infected will spread throughout the whole company. That's why it's important to isolate these, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So a return orienting program, from what I gathered, it's a security exploit technique used by attackers to execute code on their target system. So from what I gathered, it's compiled of like snippets code or gadgets within a memory space. So different code that they can come up with, they try to use it to compile an attack onto a target system. A common engineering attack. So we talk about these all the time. This is just a malicious activity to try to to try to um, exploit human error. And one that we always see is phishing attacks. Um, it can come in various forms, such as spear phishing, which is a certain individual, or welling. Welling is just where you go after a CEO or somebody that's real prominent. Other types of social engineering attacks, smishing, which is texting. So you get these like spam text messages, which are really common now. Vishing, where somebody calls you, you usually have like, oh, you have your car's extended warranty or something like that. And then you have baiting, which is trying to persuade these individuals to compromise their security measures, and that way they can gain access to a system. So some mitigation techniques on just some of the things we talked about, and a lot of these you'll hear repeated. Um, First one, privilege escalation. So we want to keep our accounts up to date. And this is one that you'll hear over and over and over again. We need to patch when needed. We need to monitor it constantly, the network and the computers. We need to perform vulnerability scans to see if there's any vulnerabilities we need to patch. For example, in the lab we've been doing here recently, we need to look up those open ports, see what they go to, and then we need to patch them because they could be like the Samba and cause direct access to our root, and then they can go in and wreak havoc on our system. We definitely need to do implementation of proper passwords and also employee training. So just looking for different stuff, like I said, so for phishing or for privilege escalation, just look for any abnormalities, any altered function of your system, anything like that. Buffer flow, we want to address randomize or space randomization, which this is it's just moving around of allocated space um, in different locations of the data regions. Data execution prevention. Uh, this just data executions uh, flag certain areas of the memory, whether it be executable or not, to stop attacks from running code non-executable area on a non-executable area. Excuse me. And then you've got structured exception handler overwrite protection. It's a bit of a handful, but this is just used to assist stopping malicious code when being used to structure as structured exception handling, software and hardware exception managers, and it's based on the stack-based buffer overflow, as we talked about before. Rootkits, again, you see up-to-date software. We want to download only from trusted sources, and then education of employees or of our company. Uh, Trojan horses education is huge. So, like we talked about before, do not download or install software that you have not either A, gotten approved by us or has been sent to you through a reputable source. Do not open an attachment or run unless it's sent by a company or your company or an individual within the company. And also keep your computers up to date. Current patches should be installed. And this goes not just company wide, but also in your personal ones. Uh, these mitigation techniques will help you solve any problem that you may have. Backdoor, we want to implement antiviruses and firewalls. We want to network monitor, or we want to monitor networking. We want to whitelist any layers that um, or we want to whitelist any programs. That way we can go through and find out which programs should be run, which ones shouldn't be run, and that way we limit the exposure of our company. And then layered security measures, so implementing firewalls, implementing antivirus softwares, implementing different layers so that backdoors just can't be easily put in. And then, of course, viruses. Avoid clicking on pop-ups. I know it's easy to use trusted security software, scan files before downloading them, and then, of course, filter emails before they're sent or received. That's something we'll have implemented within the company. And that way, we don't have any malicious content making its way in. Uh, Return oriented programming, same thing. We need to monitor, we need to make sure that nothing's acting weird. And then social engineering attacks, we want to train employees, we want to test the training. So, not just do we want to train the employees what to look for, but maybe biannually or on a regular basis, send out a phishing email just to see if the employees have paid attention to what we ask. Um, and then we want to implement common security measures. So, as we stated before, antiviruses, firewalls, monitoring constantly on the network, and then keeping software up to date, and then implementing multi-factor authentication. So, two-factor authentication. What this will do is if somebody tries to sign in, if they sign in, it'll immediately let you know. And unless you have given them access, then they will not be able to access your account. So the video I'm recording now will be put in here. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to go back and look at it. And then here are my references if you ever need to go back and look at it. But thank you for listening to me. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.